Welcome to a new video, guys. A new patch for Hell Let Loose will soon be coming out. This week's developer briefing included some information related to this patch, and also a sneak peek of a new weapon. It is good to know that Hell Let Loose's developers make a distinction between updates and patches. The updates generally introduce a lot of new content, and the patches generally include quality of life improvements and bug fixes. Today's video is about patch 17. Over the last 1.5 weeks, the developers and part of the community have been testing this patch. It has been running on the test server to determine if the bug fixes work and the quality of life improvements benefit the gameplay. Most of the changes are very situational and map specific, and I won't go through all of them, but there are a few interesting tweaks as well. This patch will most likely release in the next few weeks, as the devs have mentioned that they will probably know a release date by the next dev briefing. Please note that the tests are still going on, so some things might not be included in the final version. So let's get into the actual changes. There's one little quality of life change that excites me. If you follow this channel, you know that I like to play as a squad leader. This means I'm looking at my map half of the game, trying to understand the situation of our team and my squad. One thing that always annoys me is the clunkiness of the in-game map. When I look at footage from the game Squad, I always get very envious. That map looks so smooth and easy to use. Secretly, I was always hoping the Hell Let Loose devs would give some proper attention to their map so it's easier to use. When you zoom in, it instantly zooms in big time on where your mouse is pointing at that moment. It is functional, but especially in the heat of battle, when you quickly want to mark something, it can get you killed. Patch 17 will include smoother map zooming, so there should be no more problem after it releases. It sounds like a small change to improve map zooming smoothness, but since it's a mechanic I use constantly, this might really improve the user experience. Aside from the smoothness, I don't really like the aesthetics of the map in Hell Let Loose. I hope the devs will change that at some point as well. The fact that it's a small, square-shaped static picture makes it feel like a little cheap compared to other games. Since you can't really use the space around the map to see what's going on, they might as well make it a full-screen map with a bit more detail. But perhaps there's something for a new update. Another change in patch 17 is related to the armor system. Armor has been quite a topic of debate in the community, and over its lifetime, Hell Let Loose has seen quite a few changes when it comes to armor. The meta has been focusing for a long time on heavy tanks. A new change that is being tested is upgrading the mobility of the M4A1 Sherman tank. This is a medium tank on the American side. I don't play too much armor myself, but I'm sure there's people who like to see this change. There's another vehicle related change coming up. Even though this is a small change as well, it will definitely have its impact. Since trucks have been introduced in Hell Let Loose, the driving has been a topic of discussion. It still feels really clunky, and it seems like the maps were not really designed for it. Who hasn't had the experience of jumping into a transport truck at the start of a match to be crashed behind some random object before you reach the center objective? So when the patch releases, the trucks will most likely keep rolling when you release the gas. This will give you the ability to better control your speed. I'm curious to see if this will also mean taking corners will be easier, because steering is really sensitive and it could also be related to the instant reduction in speed. Gameplay wise, there are a few other changes. The weapon sway of the binoculars will be removed. Initially I wasn't too sure why. As a pacifist Dutch fellow, I never use weapons, and since I'm not a fanatical bird watcher, I don't use binoculars that often either. Still, through my sharp sense of analytical thinking, I came to the conclusion that binoculars also have sway. This leads me to think that the devs want to remove the sway mainly because of placing markers on the map. Placing markers through your binoculars at the moment is quite inaccurate due to the sway, and you will often accidentally place a tank marker quite far from the tank. This means that this is another practical change that increases the quality of life for squad leaders. Apart from the mentioned changes, there's also a large list of bug fixes and other small changes that are map specific. There are too many to mention all of them, but I will mention a few that stood out to me. The hedge asset for multiple maps will be changed. I'm not sure what this means exactly, but I guess they changed the textures and perhaps the way the game interacts with hedges. The maps that will be impacted by this are Quarantaine, Omaha, Purple Heart, Saint-Marie de Mons, Saint-Mary-Église and Utah. There was this annoying bug that no matter what loadout you choose, you always spawn with loadout 1. I used to have this happen to me every other game and then it stopped after one of the updates or patches. Apparently it still does exist for some people. The goal is to have this fixed in patch 17. Some people have the bug that they can't talk in the dev or deploy screen. I was actually playing with a guy yesterday that had exactly that problem. This seems to have to do with the remapping of your radio channel keys. However, this should be fixed with the next patch. There were a few issues related to joining a game via Steam, be it the server list or a direct link. This should also be resolved with the patch. There's a whole bunch of other fixes that are map specific and you can check these out in the patch notes. Apart from the patch notes, the developer briefing also included an early image of an additional gun. This machine gun seems to be the M2 Browning, which is a gun in the US arsenal. It was developed near the end of World War I and has been in use for a very long time up to this day. The M2 Browning has been longer in use than any other firearm in the US arsenal, except for the M1911 pistol, which is also in the game. The M2 Browning is often used being mounted on vehicles, so there's a good chance this will be attached on the half-track soon. The developers have already confirmed that a weaponized version will be coming in a future update. My secret hope is that it will also include MG squads, similar to the recon squads which are limited to 2 players, that can create machine gun emplacements. Likely the idea isn't so great anymore when you've been suppressed in a trench for 20 minutes, but for now it sounds amazing. I don't see any specific plans related to optimization in the patch notes. However, I do have to say my game runs a lot better these days, especially after the last patch. I initially thought it got worse, but I re-verified my game files. This turned off the launch options that I had prepared, such as running the game in DirectX 12. It appears that nowadays my game on my PC runs a lot smoother without that launch option. My graphic card is not even that great with a RX 580 8GB VRAM version, but it runs above 60 FPS mostly. My texture settings are epic and the rest is a combination of high to medium-ish. If your game runs like shit, try running it again without any launch options, it might work. Also in my experience, Community TA looks the clearest. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching guys. If you'd like to stay up to date with Hell Let Loose, please subscribe to the channel and see you in the next one.